I'm going to change the tone a little bit because I don't very often tell stories which are from personal experience. And this particular story just felt like it needed to be told tonight. It's quite a heartfelt story. Um, and it's about a trip I made just before lockdown, a couple of months before lockdown. I was lucky enough to go to India. And I'm going to move around because these lights are a bit annoying, aren't they? That's a bit better. Yes, I've been to India 2 or 3 times, and it's a place that I absolutely love. It is so different as a country, and as the spirit of the place and the spirit of the people who are there. It is just full of people, and there is such an atmosphere of enthusiasm and learning and zest for life and everything all mingled together. There is just so much life packed densely into everywhere you look. And this is a little story that I was told when I was in a place in South India on the west coast called Fort Cochin, which is a really interesting place to go to. It's a very multicultural place in India. It has a lot of histories from a lot of different places. And it's about a character I met when I was there. And I was hanging around in this little cafe place, you know, rickety tables, amazing food, interesting people watching going on. And every day I was in there, I kept noticing the same man. And he was really different to everyone else around. He was very tall and very well built, and he was wearing traditional dress. But it wasn't Indian traditional dress. It was a kind of Arab traditional dress in really rich jewel colours. And he had quite a striking face to him. And so he was very easy to notice. And he would always be sitting at a table not far away from me on his own. And after 2 or 3 days, I did something quite impertinent and quite strange, particularly for a woman in India. I went up to him and I said, "I've seen you here a few times. I'm really interested. I'm really interested in why you're here and what brought you to this place and what your story is. Your face looks like it's got an awful lot of stories in it." What a thing to say to someone. Traveler's confidence. He didn't tell me to sod off, luckily. He invited me to come and sit down, and we got more tea, and we got some of those amazing little cakes you get in India, these little coconut cakes that are they come wrapped in banana leaves, so I could just eat them all day. And he looked around the tables as if he was really worried who might be seeing him. And I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting him to be so secretive. But he said, "I think I will. I think today is the day when I am actually going to tell someone a story from my background I have never told anybody, but you're a stranger. You are likely not to stay here for very long. I can tell from everything about you. You are not from here. I think I will share it with you." And he told me this story. He said, "My name is Abu Hassan, and I didn't grow up here. I don't come from here. I come from a great city far out to the east of here, at the edge of the desert. And it is the most wonderful city. It is a city that nestles in a little valley, and it is covered in green and verdant vegetation everywhere. And most of the houses and most of the buildings are white, and there are gleaming gold minarets gleaming in the sunlight. It is a wonderful, wonderful city. I was so lucky to be born there. And I grew up there, and in my early adult years, I became a merchant. I started to buy and sell things, and I was very good at it. I started to make a lot of money. And mainly the reason I made a lot of money is because I can understand people. But in my personal life, I was less lucky. I married young, I married my childhood sweetheart, and yet only several years into our marriage, she died. She left me, and I was left all on my own. And I threw my heart into my work. I travelled away much more. I became more and more successful. I had more and more money. And yet I was lonely. But for several years, I would hear no talk of any other marriage. And my friends became worried about me. They found me withdrawn, and they tried to persuade me to start considering another wife. And it took them a long time to persuade me, but eventually I said, yes, I will open my heart up to somebody else. I will try marrying again if I can ever meet the right person. You see, I'm an old romantic at heart. And it wasn't long after I made that decision that I met her. She was young, she was sparkling, she was beautiful. She had a face like a slice of moon. And we started twinkling at one another. And we started laughing and joking with one another. And we started to want to know more about one another. And it wasn't too long after that I found myself traveling towards my own second wedding. And a wedding in our city, that is a great affair. Especially if you are as lucky as me and you have so much money and you can put on all manner of lavish entertainment and wonderful catering for your guests. It was an extraordinary affair, our wedding. And after all of the ritual was completed, after days and days of honouring each other's families, after all of that time spent praying and offering up requests to God to look after us and to bless our marriage, there we were at the wedding feast. And what a feast it was. There was curried goat with pistachios and almonds. There was rice flavoured with cardamom and pomegranate and rose water. There were all manner of delicacies, all kinds of meats and drinks and wines. It was truly a sumptuous feast. And we must have had over 200 guests in that place, all of them enjoying the feast, all of them marveling at the flavours and the delicacies on offer. And as the feast progressed, as is our custom, the bride was paraded forward in each of 7 dresses, each one more ornate than the last. And all the women marvelled at her beauty, and all the men congratulated me on my good fortune. And then my wife, as is our tradition, she went to sit in one of the 2 great golden chairs up there where I was to go and join her. And we were to go and sit there as everyone finished the feast and came to shower us with gifts and with blessings. And she shone. And I got up from my seat at the feast and I got up to go to join her. And that is when it happened. At first, I didn't think it could be me, but it was me. Because when I got up from my seat, I have to tell you, I noised the most enormous noise. It was a ripe and fruitsome noise. It was a great and rasping noise. It was a very resonant noise that seemed to appear as if from nowhere and bounce up to the ceiling and off of the drapes and ring round and round and round that building, so that every single guest in that place, no matter how far away they were or close to me, could hear it as well as the rest. And there was no doubt that that rasping and fruitsome noise had emanated from me. And there was a silence. The silence only broken by the catching of breath as a faint haze started to spread through the room around the guests near to me at my table. And people started to struggle a little bit with their breathing, but otherwise, silence. Silence for just a little bit too long. And then suddenly everyone started to talk at once. Everybody started to make conversation, but they just couldn't keep it together. And everyone just started laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. And I could feel my face just getting redder and redder. And the embarrassment just rose up from the ground and filled me up and swallowed me up. And I had to leave that place. I had to get up and I had to turn. And I said to someone next to me, I must answer a call of nature. And when I said that, the whole place collapsed in laughter as I fled from that room. I could not stay there a moment more. I was so embarrassed. I went out into the corridors behind the great hall we were feasting in. I went out to the stables outside. I found my horse that was saddled up. I got onto my horse and I rode. I left that place. I just had to go anywhere, just leave that place. And I rode. And I rode all night. And I did not stop, my poor horse exhausted, but all I could think about, all I could feel was the shame. And eventually, as dawn came up in the east, the way I was riding, I came to the coast and there was a boat. And I got on that boat and I sailed to wherever that boat was going. And that boat just happened to sail here for Cochin. You see the boats there out by the fishing nets in the harbour. This is the place I next saw. And I'd had a little time to calm my thoughts and think of what I would do next. And I got off the boat without a penny piece to my name. And I went to find the ruler of that place. And I explained that I was very experienced in both matters of buying and selling and matters of security, and working as I had done in my city for the local ruler. And he took me on. He hired me. And I started working for him, and I worked well. And for 10 years, I settled in this place. This great place that is so tolerant of all cultures and where anybody can fit in. But the crucial thing was, none of them knew me, and none of them knew anything about my wedding feast or what had happened. And the years rolled on. I created a new life. I created a new self, and I was successful because I understand people. I know how to make money. But as the years wore on, I started pining for my old home, the city I grew up in, that place that just gleams in the sunlight. And so last year, I decided to go back. And I made my excuses to the ruler of this place. He granted me leave, and I packed a few things and I got on the boat. And I sailed back to that coast that I'd left all those years ago. And I found myself a horse on the other side, and I rode and I adventured. And I encountered many dangers on that return journey, many difficulties, many challenges. But eventually I found myself riding down the hill and seeing for the first time in many years my home city, the place where I was born, the place where I grew up. It looked exactly the same. It looked beautiful. It looked welcoming. But I knew I had to be careful. I had no idea whether anybody would remember me, but just in case, I disguised myself. I disguised myself as a holy man, as a traveling beggar holy man, and I put on simple robes, and I said to myself, for 7 days and 7 nights, I will travel in the outskirts of this city. I will talk to people. I will find out the news. I will make sure nobody recognizes me. And I did. And it's an interesting thing to travel as a holy person with no possessions and to listen to the things that people have to say about their lives and the things they want to share with you as somebody who has some kind of holy status. And for 6 days and 6 nights, it was an interesting way to travel and to be. The food was sparse, but the rest of it was very interesting. And on the 7th day, I came across a woman outside her house and started to talk to her. And in the middle of that conversation, her daughter ran out from the house and she tugged at her mother's sleeve and she said, "Mother, I have my friend here with me and she is learning to be an astrologer. So I need to know from you, what day and what hour was I born? Can you tell me? And then I will leave you alone and not bother you anymore." And the mother turned round to the daughter and she said, "Oh, daughter, that is an easy one to answer. That is an easy one to remember. Because, my daughter, you were born on the very night and at the very hour that Abu Hassan farted." Imagine. I've not finished it. You can imagine. You can imagine how much I wanted to hide who I really was. And you can imagine that I turned on my heel then and I left that city. I left that city for good. I traveled back to the coast. I got back on the boat and I came back here to Fort Cochin. And Fort Cochin will now forever be my home because of this terrible secret that I carry. And you can understand now why I have never told anyone this before. And I would ask you, stranger, traveler, please never tell it to anyone else.